To look back at the weekend, and then as the week progresses, look ahead to some of the better games coming up this week. But what a win for Purdue against number 2 Iowa, coming off their win against Penn State at number 2 in the country. And Tom Deinhardt covers Purdue football for goldenblack.com. It's Golden Black Illustrated with also a part of Rivals in the Yahoo Sports Network. Joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Tom, I think Purdue's had Iowa's numbers at times, but was that staggering what you saw on Saturday?
Jeff Brom is 4-1 against the Hawkeyes, if you can believe it. And yes, it was staggering. I guess not that Purdue won, but they won in the fashion that they did. 24-7, and it really wasn't even that close, honestly. They got Iowa out of the rhythm very early on. Purdue got a lead. The Iowa offense had to throw more than it wanted to. That set Purdue up to get after the quarterback. They got 4 turnovers, 4 sacks. The defense really set the tone, and Purdue comes away with one of the biggest wins of this college football season. That's at the halfway point.
Tom, coacheshotseat.com, and I know it's not they don't have an exact science because coaching hot seats are not, but all year long they've had Jeff Brom up towards the top of that hot seat list. He gets the win over Iowa, and I'm looking at it right now. He's completely out of their top 20 or so, just completely done. Was there ever really hot seat concerns on Jeff Brom, or was it more just speculation based on the fact how the last season and a half had gone for him?
Not really a hot seat, just because Purdue cannot afford to buy him out, honestly. They don't have the money to write those checks those SEC schools can write to make coaches go away. There was a sense of urgency. That may be a better way to phrase it. Again, that never in peril of losing his job this year, regardless of the record. But how he does this year would certainly set up for an interesting 2022. That's when things could get kind of dicey, I think, and interesting. So, Purdue has not been to a bowl the last 2 years. They need to show progress. They've got to get to some postseason destination this year. I don't care where it is. You got to get to 6-6, show progress, keep the fan base interested and optimistic. Good thing for Brom is they certainly are on course there. They're at 4-2. With a few winnable games down the stretch here. So it looks like he's safe and sound thus far, at least for the short term here in West Lafayette.
So, Tom, we know that at top 25 rankings, those can come and go quickly. And, you find yourself in there, you turn around, you lose the game, and you're right back out. But for Purdue to be ranked in the top 25 for the first time in 14 years, a stat I saw earlier, what does that mean for this football program?
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
I think that was the longest drought of any Power 5 league that was currently out of the polls. So 2007 was the last time they were there. We talked to Coach Brom today about that. He obviously doesn't really care about poll rankings, as you would imagine. But the fans love that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that certainly shows progress on Brom's standpoint. So I'm not sure if they merit it, but they're there nonetheless. They're not in the coaches' poll. But again, Purdue's got a number by its name, the 25. Wisconsin Badgers rolling to town this weekend. The Badgers have beaten Purdue 14 times in a row, guys.
Oof.
And this is a big one. This is a Wisconsin team. It's not vintage Wisconsin. Very vulnerable. So, back in 2018, Purdue beat number 2 Ohio State in a very emotional game, but they did not capitalize on it. They lost the next week at Michigan State. I guess the goal for Purdue is to try to build some momentum off this big win in Iowa City, right? You can't let it dissipate. You got to take advantage of it. Keep rolling. Like I said, here comes Wisconsin, a team that you owe, and a team that's had your number, and a team that is very vulnerable. So it'll be very interesting to see how Purdue comes out Saturday if they can keep this mojo going.
That West in the Big Ten, the East has 4 teams ranked in the top 10 with Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State, and all of them have been good. And Iowa obviously had beaten Penn State 2 weeks ago. And then you have Iowa, and now, as you mentioned, and Craig brought up Purdue back to being ranked. Is it Iowa seems to be head and shoulders, but does this not open the door from what looked like would be an easy roll for Iowa into the championship game?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that Big Ten West. You're right. If you look at their schedule, now they're off this week, the Hawkeyes are. Got a chance to lick their wounds and figure things out. But if you look at their schedule, it still sets up for Iowa to win that division, I think. I know I don't want to totally discount Minnesota just yet. And Purdue still really does have a shot, although it's probably going to be a long shot. But again, I still think Iowa's the team to beat, despite that loss last weekend at home. Maybe that's what they need. And you probably end up going to have an Iowa-Ohio State showdown in Indianapolis for that Big Ten championship in early December.
Tom Deithart covers Purdue, and the Boilermakers coming off the huge win against Iowa. Iowa's a team that has forced a lot of turnovers. They didn't get that against Purdue. Is that something that they have to be elite?
Yeah, and I think that was, some people thought it was smoke and mirrors. Iowa was 6-0. That offense, guys, I'll be honest with you, the Iowa offense is not impressive. It's not a vintage Iowa offensive line. The quarterback is average. They got some decent receivers. They have a good tight end, but they really struggle offensively, and that offense was getting a big boost from all those takeaways. Led the nation with 20 takeaways, 16 interceptions. They had scored 3 defensive touchdowns in the first 6 games. So they were getting a big boost from that defense, and you're not going to get that every week, right? And Purdue's got a pretty salty defense, and they were able to, like I said early on, sort of contain that Iowa offense. So, like I said, turnovers are an elixir to a lot of things and cover up a lot of warts on a team, and that's certainly been the case for Iowa. I still don't think it's a great Iowa team, but it's certainly be the best of sort of a pedestrian a lot of teams in that Big Ten West.
Their wide receiving core at Purdue is one of the best in the country. Where do you rank it in the Big Ten and in the country with the depth they've been able to get at that position? And if Jeff Brom could get a consistent quarterback, would people maybe start to notice a little bit more?
Yeah. It's a solid group of receivers. There's a lot of good wideout cores in the nation, fellas. I don't profess to know them all, but I know Ohio State, just in the Big Ten's got a very, very good group of wideouts. Purdue, of course, has David Bell. Phenomenal game last Saturday, maybe a future first-round draft choice. TJ Sheffield out of the slot. Brock Thompson. They're a nice, solid group of wideouts. The thing that was unique about Saturday for Purdue was they played 3 quarterbacks. It was quite a sight, guys. They were shuffling guys in for a while, and Jeff Brom spent the offseason looking for ways to spruce up his offense in the red zone, right? They were kicking too many field goals, not scoring enough touchdowns. The ground game is abysmal. How are they going to move the ball on the ground? How are they going to generate touchdowns in the red zone? Jeff Brom hatched this plan to use 3 quarterbacks, sort of change the pace guys, and it worked. It worked for one Saturday at least. It'll be interesting to see how this evolves for Purdue, how heavily they continue to use it. But give Jeff Brom credit for trying to find a solution, finding the solution, and coming up with that big win Saturday to keep this season filled with hope for the Boilermakers.
Well, I had just somebody on our chat room, by the way, Tom said, I remember when Tom used to write for the Sporting News. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Back in the day.
I'm an old man now.
Yeah, well, you and I, we're both old men, so I'm not saying you are. I'm 62, but I do know that I've watched you cover the Big Ten for quite some time, and obviously that's why we reached out with you on Purdue as well after their win. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
You guys take care. Thanks for having me.
Tom Deithart, Gold and Black Illustrated, Rivals and Yahoo. Again, former writer for the Sporting News. He's been covering the Big Ten forever, covers Purdue.
I feel like I've been reading his stuff for a really long time. And, so cool to talk to him. And, what a huge win for Purdue. I mean, I said at the start of the show that was my biggest win this weekend. There were other wins that mattered, and it certainly had ramifications, but that was a big win. And, obviously – the thing about college football is you got to keep it going. All that's for naught if you turn right around and you get waxed the following contest. But hey, to be 4-2, and they lost some guys like Rondale Moore. They don't have him in the arsenal. They're using 3 quarterbacks, so they didn't have much of a running game like most don't against Iowa. But I did notice King DeRue was their leading rusher. Remember Baylor recruiting him very hard. Matt Rule really wanted him a couple years back, and he ended up going to Purdue. But looks like he's doing okay for himself, which is good to see. And what a nice win and a fun race shaping up in the Big Ten as we start to hit this stretch run. Yeah,
by the way, if you want to get off coacheshotseat.com, just beat the number 2 team in the country convincingly in their place.
It didn't help Orgeron when he beat Florida, and they weren't number 2. I know that. But the Big Ten Conference, the Eastern Division, Michigan State's 4-0 in the conference. Michigan 3-0. Ohio State 3-0. Penn State 2-1. They're all going to start beating each other up. None of them have played, and they have to because they're in the same division, with the only loss being Penn State losing at Iowa. Now a half game up on Minnesota, who kind of got themselves right back in it, beating a team that everybody beats in Nebraska. And Purdue's win against Iowa, instead of 1-2, and Iowa's 4-0. They're 2-1 and just a half game back and on a tiebreaker. In fact, if something crazy happens.
But by the way, Smoky, you know who the number one on Coach's Hot Seat is this week?
No, it should be Scott Frost.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I just looked at that too, and Jeff Scott of USF has been a consistent number one or number two on this thing as well all year long. He's been like near the top of the list the entire time, and now you got the Manny Diaz's and those guys starting to move up, matriculate towards the top. But Scott Frost is number one, and I was curious your thoughts. We were talking last week about how they've caught some bad breaks. They've made some insanely stupid mistakes to cost themselves opportunities in games. But you were admitting to seeing some progress, and at least if they could clean some things up, there's some promise there. Are you feeling any differently after just another weekend?
I am, and let me tell you why. They're a dumb football team. They remain a dumb football team. They played their what's off and what they did and almost beat Michigan, but they would have turned around and lost to Minnesota probably anyway. I don't understand some of what they do. I am not one of those. If you've ever been fired, no matter the reasons, you never want to see somebody else. But Scott Frost has been a disaster. That's what I said. I thought last week after how they played Michigan, after they had beaten the hell out of Northwestern, okay, let this thing play itself out. And I think you still let it play itself out. But they are just a wreck. And I mean they have as much what they've done to themselves has been what others have done to them. It really is. It's sad.
It's unbelievable to watch a team hurt itself as much as they do consistently. Like it really is almost astonishing that a team can hurt itself as much as they do at times.
Every game.
Yeah, I know.
It's every game. It's
inevitable.
Even when they've won, it's still special teams mistakes, and it's a nightmare. And it's field goal kicker kicks a 51-yarder. He's missed 3 to 5 extra points. Field goals that missed a critical one when they were at the 1, the 9, and the 29 at Minnesota and did not score.
I'm going to do an old school mental political cartoon for you. If you have to imagine
please
this.
do it. I mean, put it up.
Here's the cartoon I'm drawing. It's a
Charlie Brown and Lucy.
No, it's a Nebraska football player laying in a hospital bed with a cast on his foot, and the doctor going, "This is the 8th time you've shot yourself in the foot this year. Yeah. You've got to stop doing this."
You
may want to also look inside if they have anything in their chest as well.
They do, though. I don't know how Nebraska fans are, week by week just dealing with it because it's so incredibly frustrating to watch. It'd be one thing if you were just we've seen bad football teams like at Kansas. Kansas knows they're not supposed to beat anybody right now. They've got a lot of work to do, and Lance Leipold's trying to do that work, but they got a long way to go. But at least that when Nebraska, I think fans probably know they're not a great football team by any means. That's stating the obvious, but to have to watch a team that's maybe a little bit above or below average, make themselves be so below average it's just hard to watch.
I'd rather take the quick shot of getting blown out right away in a game than watch my team dangle it in front of me only to at the end.
It's just bad. And I mean, there was a time they were actually, and we say it because that's my favorite team. He's Oklahoma, Florida State. So we bring all that into the play, and we give them way too much credit. They make me sick to my damn stomach. All right, when we come back, we're not done. We will wrap up this 4 o'clock hour. At 5 o'clock, we will take calls and also go over text messages as well. And at 5:30, Dr.